Hello and welcome to TV and Tequila, the show where we discuss TV series we think more people should be watching. I am your host Lou, and today we will be talking about Freeform's Motherland, Fort Salem. Last time we were discussing Anacostia Corsamane, her connection to Scylla and her relationship to the Bellwether unit. On today's episode we will focus on the over 300-year-old witch herself, General Sarah Alder. Join us for a talk about Alder and the Biddies, all things mycelium and debating a vampire's lair. As usual, my fellow fans and friends Alex and Chloe will be talking from an American perspective, while Laura and myself speak from a rather European background. Before we jump in, same old, this is a podcast from adults for adults. It will contain strong language and is not necessarily safe for work. Also, we have all seen the entirety of the show, so spoiler warnings for episodes 1 through 10 of Motherland, Fort Salem. Without further ado, let's jump in. Hello and welcome back. This is the MFS podcast, or maybe it's also called TV and Tequila. I'm not sure. It's a podcast. We talk about Motherland, Fort Salem. I am Lou. I am here with Chloe, Laura, and Alex. Alex, what's your favorite fruit?
I am a fan of peaches. It's not just because I'm from Georgia, but the watermelon is really, really good right now. So I'm going to say the watermelon.
That's very cool. Laura, what's your favorite fruit?
Big fan of mangoes, but they're expensive and from far, far away, so I have them rarely. But they are very good. Also pineapple, except I'm slightly allergic. My tongue gets like swollen. It's fun. Get like fun and tingly.
Chloe, what's your favorite fruit?
I like apples or I like strawberries.
What's
your favorite fruit?
I think kiwi. I haven't had kiwi in a while. I've been craving it, so now it's my favorite fruit. Anyways, I don't mean the bird, by the way. If any Australian person is listening to this.
Or the people.
One people.
Just the one.
So today we're going to talk about Alder and the Biddies and maybe delve into some magic system stuff. We'll see how it goes. I think, Alex, you said something that you wanted to say later, so say it now.
Oh, just because we were talking before we started recording, and I'm like, we should say this on air or whatever. We're not live. I was saying that it makes sense to do Alder and the Biddies and get a little bit into the magic of the world of Motherland at the same time, because a lot of what we learn about magic or work, as they call it, comes from Alder's storyline beats, like not like, seed sounds or whatever, because we see those from the main girls. We see that all the time, and the different applications, necrofixer, etc. But with Alder we learn more. We learn things like each country doesn't their work in the same way. There are certain sounds that are more common, seed sounds that are more common in other countries. Some of them use hand motions, which I believe we mentioned in a previous episode. I think Lou said that they use hand motions rather than just their voice. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them did like a dance, more dance-like moves, full-on Last Airbender style. So yeah, and frequently she mentions or it's kind of like hinted at several times that seed sounds have changed and evolved over the few centuries. She said she's what, 300 some years old, I think they said. Like when they pulled out that little, I don't know, egg, and the seed sounds are in it, and she was like, everyone else is like, I've never heard these before, but Alder is saying, I have, but it was a long time ago. So like seed sounds can change and evolve. The reason the Turim didn't want to teach Alder their specific sounds was because she had changed the ones that she grew up with from, standard magic and whatnot and turn them into weapons. So they can change on their own and they can be changed. And all of these things we learn through Alder's storyline. So it just makes sense to kind of touch on both at once.
Absolutely, absolutely.
There's a couple things within the names that are like in the Alder. I don't know if we touched on the names of like Anacostia and Scylla and Rael and Tally like first in their first section, or we talked about it later, because there's a couple things with Sarah Alder that's interesting.
So Chloe, do you just want to start with the name of Sarah Alder?
Yeah, I did a little Googling in my partially awake time from 11 to noon when I was a little sleepy. But it says, Google says, Sarah is frequently the name refers to Sarah, the wife of Abraham in the Hebrew Bible, the Christian Old Testament, and the Islamic Quran. It means woman of high rank, simply translated as princess, and in modern Hebrew, Sarah is the word for woman minister. And then, so that's interesting. I don't know, I mean, it might just be a powerful name, or it might just be a typical name of the time. I don't really know.
Is
Both.
Sarah, and I might be wrong, isn't she like one of the main characters in, yeah, it's like the name of one of the main characters in the book about the Salem witch trials.
You threw me off. What? The main character of what now?
The Crucible.
The Crucible. It's a play about the Salem witch trials, and we had to read it in school and annotate it and stuff like that, and it's about how they're accusing people and the masses of the crowd and fear and random accusations to get what they want and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's not a non-fiction, it's like a made-up story, but
it's like historical fiction.
A historical event. And I thought that like one of the main people who's accused me in witch whatever, I thought her name was Sarah.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So I'll read the back of it really quick. It takes place in Salem, Massachusetts in 1692. It's just about the accusations and the poisonous consequences when a vengeful teenager accuses a rival of witchcraft, and the accusations multiply and consume the entire village. And so the character list, it has a Sarah Good in it. A Sarah Good. That might just be a name at the time, though, so I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think they say in the show that Sarah Alder came originally from Europe. And I think Sarah's quite a common name.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, could be the name at the time.
It's still probably worth mentioning that it's the name of one of the main characters in The Crucible, which is about the Salem witch trials, and then it just has a lot of meaning behind it with, like Chloe said when she read the definition, woman of rank, low, general.
I had one more thing about Alder. So Alder, I did a little quick googly here and there, and Alder is a tree and stuff like that, and I looked up the meaning and stuff like that, and it's kind of, the connotations are, I think it was mystery and secrets and stuff like that, because this is from treesforlife.org.uk. Just want to shout that out real quick.
So she's a secret Sarah.
Yeah. And it's kind of I guess maybe it could be symbolic of secrets and like mystery, because they would grow in places that are like moist area for the soil and for the leaves to do proper diffusion, and it's kind of but yeah.
If I had to name the most mysterious person in all of MFS, it would be Sarah Alder. Like as a character. Yeah, we don't really know. That's what bugs me. I want to throw that out there, like ask whether that bugs you too. We don't actually know anything about that woman. I mean, the unit, obviously, we get to know them best, but then we get to know Scylla because shady and stuff. We don't know the whole backstory, but we know like what she's up to. We know what Anacostia is up to. We know some backstory, but Alder has literally 300 years of backstory. And we just know propaganda. So I feel like they could throw anything our way. And it could just be like, oh yeah, that also happened. And yeah, 10 years later, this happened. 50 years later, this happened.
A really good way to, because we don't have answers, but like start questioning her backstory is looking at where she is right now, which is a person who, episode 1, Rael says, no witch in history is more controversial, has more blood on her hands. Not only that, she uses puppeting, kind of not like at will or whatever, like she felt like she was backed into a corner. But she did that. She takes girls, it's all consensual, like they're volunteering, but still she takes the youth from other girls to extend her life, all these things that she feels like she's been forced to do and she does them. They're still very morally gray, very questionable. No one needs to live 300 years. You imagine she wants to stick around and see this thing that she's helped build and keep hold of it. She doesn't want to let go of it. Basically, she doesn't want someone else to come in and mess it up. But like, that's life. That's what happens. We are born, we live, we die, and someone else takes over. So what happened over her 300 plus years? It was 323 years ago with Salem Ford, and she's about 40 or so. So she's 360 some odd years old. So what happened over those many decades and centuries to just keep reinforcing these ideas in her head that she still needs to be here, that puppeting is okay at any time, and whatever else she seems willing to do, possibly team up with the Spree, your known local terrorist for fighting the Tequila.
Team up now with your known local terrorists. Sorry, Laura, yeah?
I think 300 years is a very long time. So, who knows? But I do find it an interesting question, like why she feels that it's important that she stays in charge for this amount of time. Like, for me, I feel like she, on the one hand, she just doesn't trust people. She doesn't trust anyone, only herself. And I feel like she's one of those people who, in an office environment is always going to be telling you what to do, but she's not in the office environment. She's in the army. Anyway, but like, she doesn't seem like the type of like laissez-faire type of person. She wouldn't, after having made such a significant deal with the government, just give up her control over I feel like after being persecuted, and because she says this in the last episode, she was persecuted for years, her family was killed. After regaining control, I imagine, even though 300 years is a very long time, I imagine that it is a difficult thing to just give up after finally gaining something. So, and then I guess over time, maybe she just thought, well, why stop now? Like maybe there was a, what's the word, precipice? I don't know. There was like a point. Yeah, I guess a tipping point, or just, some point in time where she'd been alive for such a long time that she was like, well, now they're going to mess it up after this amount of time, and so I just need to keep going. But I do wonder, if she, like, especially the whole thing about taking other women's youth and other witches' youth who she claims to protect and, have built a place for.
Yeah, I found it very, like you said, in episode 9, I think there's this moment between General Alder and President Kelly, something, surname, where the president says, and no one deserves retirement more than you. And actually, in episode 9, which is so late in the season, it actually hit me like, why don't you just retire? Like, I get it, like right now you have to spree, but before that you surely must have, at some point, it must have been a bit more quiet and you could have just retired and told your biddies, thanks guys, I'm gonna go die now. Like, I don't know why. No, but seriously, like, is she not bored? It seems to me like she's such a, maybe not control freak, but like she has such a drive to keep leading. That woman is insane. I mean, yeah, I think, like, I mean, if you needed one biddy or two, but she needs how many? She needs a whole band. So yeah, sorry. Yeah, no.
Got some backup singers, we got drummers, we got singers,
dancers. Yeah,
no,
Chloe,
it's like
you wanted to
Beyonce.
say something.
It was more or less along the.
Oh, sorry.
It was more or less along the lines of, if you don't, like, do it yourself, if you want it done right, do it yourself. And then they also, like, after the first 200 years, why the fuck not? Just keep going. You're already at 200. Why not go for 300 at this point in the game? But yeah, I mean, people have been saying, like, oh, she started the spree, so they need her still. Because again, Lou is right that there
The
must have been
spree?
a time. Some people were like, "Oh yeah, she like puppet. She like has that. She designed the spree, so then she has an enemy to face, and then it kind of took a life of its own to keep her in a position of power." But additionally, just like she's freaking intense, man, and I'm intense too. But she's intense, dude.
I would say I had a thought, but like quickly in response to that, I think she would know. Once you're alive long enough, and not even like in a supernatural sense, like even adults, like we know that bad guys will come all on their own. Like you don't need to create them. That makes sense. So I don't know if I think she would have created the spree knowing full well that in the world they live in, there's going to be more problems always to solve. It's never going to be all fixed. But the thought I had was, I wonder if I can't remember. I think she has 5 biddies, and I'm wondering if it started out that way. Like maybe the first time she, when she was just getting old on her own, and she was like, I want to knock like a couple, 2, 3, 4 decades off. Maybe she just needed one girl for that. And then, she gets to her 150-year mark, and she's like, I need to do this again. And maybe that the first biddy, she passed away or whatever, it was very sad. And she took another girl or, volunteer, like I said. I did appreciate how she's always like very sure, like even when she was dying on her knees and Tally said, take me, she looked at her and she was like, are you sure? So it is they're making it very clear that this is a voluntary thing. But I'm wondering, so the second time she does this and realizes that that one girl didn't work, or it only got her, a little bit younger, and so she needed 2 girls. And the longer she does this, is she just going to need more and more and more girls? Is she going to be rolling around with like a harem of 20 older women, like another century from now? Like, where does it end?
Wouldn't a harem of older women just be called a book club?
I was gonna say,
Yeah, follow that up.
well, no, but like, okay, is the book club not also in charge of, or just responsible for keeping the base alive? Because I don't know, I don't fully understand it, but like, because when they go to The Hague and one of the biddies dies, then you see the, like, I think there's like fruit on the tree that is like going foul or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't fully remember. So that means they're also sustaining not only Alder, but like the whole infrastructure of this place.
Yeah. I think Anacostia, I think what we know is basically that the biddy dies, Alder takes a hit, basically gets old in a split second, and then cut to Anacostia seeing that a whole tree is rotting basically, and like this, I think apple or something went like, lost all color, went all smelly.
The whole garden was dying. Like,
yeah, the whole garden. Yeah,
I was gonna say that maybe that's the reason why there's more biddies. Like, I mean, we don't know how many biddies there were in the beginning, but like, maybe they have to sustain more, so they need more biddies.
But do you think that Alder and the Biddies, sorry, it just sounds like a band when I say it like that.
Alder and the Biddies.
But no, do you think that Alder and the Biddies only sustain Fort Salem because there's so many, because they have been there for a couple of years now, or that they sustain other places too? Like that they kind of an Avatar kind of mindset, that they balance something out in the world? What do you think?
Why do they, I mean, that's what I'm wondering. Why do they need to sustain other places? With Alder, it makes sense. She's going to die otherwise. But nature works on its own unless the place where this stuff is supposed to grow is somehow dead as well.
Mushrooms. I mean, there wouldn't be this much mycelium under Fort Salem if the whole thing was alive, right?
Brain, hello. Also, it could also be that they've been there so long. I had to ask my friend, because Salem today is not where Salem was back then. Like, it's changed. But it could be that they've been in this spot so long that their magic from them and all the witches that have passed through Fort Salem over the years has just seeped into the ground, the trees, everything. You know, she does this Biddy ascension ritual. I don't know what it's called. That's what I'm calling it. This ascension ritual, because it is an honor for them. You know, they've done it so many times over the many, many years that it's just kind of like seeped into the ground, and maybe that's why there's so much, that whole mycelium wall growing underneath there. Like, it's altering the land around them, connecting them through and Alder to the, you know, the land of Fort Salem, and making weird things happen, and providing a concentration of magic on Beltane and all that other stuff. So it could just be a gradual thing, like not intentional, but like, you know, if you do weird shit in one place long enough, it affects the place around you.
Yeah, just really brief. I mean, Adel said this, that like, you think your magic doesn't have a cost, and it was just like, what comes afterwards? And maybe it's like Alex said, all of the magic is, the cost is like rotting into the soil, and then that's why, yeah, I'm making hand motions, but no one can see me.
Absolutely. That was actually what I was going to say, because we have a couple of clues. We have first Adil, who says like, so magic always has a cost, and then some people on Tumblr have also pointed out that in episode 10, I think Alder creates a kind of storm and like has like lightnings shot at various Camarilla members, and it kind of looks like infected mycelium. So some people pointed out that the dark webbing was the same dark webbing that exploded with Rael and Abigail, was the same dark webbing that was then somehow on, what was the badass little girl's name?
Kalida.
And then one more thing that would support this theory in a way is that like Rael always took on some like part of the illness, which is like some kind of equivalent thingy, like balance. And then when she heals with the methods that the military taught her, basically like via linking, she doesn't get anything, and it gets into this mycelium thing.
Well,
right?
But that was because she had some of it on her finger, right?
Yeah.
But was it?
The thing is that she healed her, and she was trying to heal her in her way. But she was then super surprised because there was nothing, like there was no sign of the illness on her.
Back to Alder, do you think her magic with the biddies is some kind of negative shit, or what do you think?
Like, I imagine that her extending her life like that would be almost offensive to the Necros, because their whole thing is death and the beauty of it. And they might not say anything against her because that's Alder. But like, you know, death isn't a punishment, it's a reward for living and doing your stint being alive. I mean, Elliot said before that the Necros, they can't bring people back from the dead. Like, that's not something that they can do in this world, which is either true or a lie to prepare it for happening later. But for now, we're assuming that it's just not something that they're capable of doing, because that's like that's a higher power, a whole massive chunk of the balance in the universe that you don't mess with, because it would have, and this is not anything confirmed in the show, this is just kind of like your general life consideration thing. So the fact that she won't die and keeps extending her life, you know, it's probably a very powerful magic that she does, with, you know, the Biddy ascension ritual thing, and it probably does have lasting effects. Like, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and that could very well apply to magic. You know, I don't see why it shouldn't. And her magic also is probably a combination of like the old way of doing it and the way it's done now, because like we said earlier, we know that seeds and everything can change over time, or they can be changed, and hers is probably maybe reminiscent of how it used to be. When she first started weaponizing her seed sounds, it probably wasn't a smooth transition. So she's got like the prototype version, and then everyone else has like the refined way of doing it. So I mean, there's lots of reasons her magic can be different, but I would be willing to bet money that if that part of what makes her magic very odd looking is the fact that she's doing things she probably really shouldn't be messing with.
Just as an aside, if you can answer to this if you want, if you don't, you don't have to. But when we saw Fort Salem kind of deteriorate, after one of the biddies died, the first thing that came to my mind was actually a vampire's lair. Do you know what that is? So it's pretty well explained in D&D. Vampires have a certain place they call home, and they have certain advantages when they're home, as in they can call rats, they can call bats, they can create mist. But if they die, the whole place gets sunny again and real nature comes back. So maybe
that's cool.
Yeah, so maybe Alder is like a reverse vampire. It's kind of like, it's very sunny and very cool and she channels energy from there, but when she dies, real nature comes back, as in the whole place should have died 300 years ago.
Like it's purging itself from this unnatural stuff that's kind of grown over everywhere, like the garden. If it's, you know, if it's being sustained by magic, it wouldn't be the natural growth. So it's like, let me purge all this shit since you're dying now, and then it'll regrow as it should have, you know.
I was wondering if, like, maybe before she had the biddies, she drew her energy from that earth, and she drew her life from there, and that's why it's dead now. But it wouldn't really make any sense for then the extra biddies to have to invigorate both her and the soil. So maybe not.
Like, I don't know if she is keeping it alive. It's just kind of this, it's like the world's most floweriest mood ring. So if she's alive, healthy and happy, it's reflecting that, and it's bountiful and it's very beautiful. But then when she's hurt or dying or whatever, like when in episode 10 when she was 2 biddies down, I'm sure the garden was like on fire or something.
Just because you said about there being home advantages in your lair, does that mean that maybe it gives home advantages to witches?
Oh yeah, she says that when Adele brings Kalida there. It's like
it's witch's place.
It's a witch's place. It's basically Fort Salem. Everything we do is more powerful here.
True. Yeah, I'd forgotten about that. So that might also, I mean, that's probably also part of it, right?
I think maybe there's something as a witch's lair, basically, in Motherland, Fort Salem. That would not be the oddest thing. I could actually see that. But I think at this point we're forgetting the mycelium, which is huge. It should not be that. I mean, yes, mushrooms do rule the underworld. And I have no idea about a typical sized mushroom, but this wall seemed rather large.
It's sentient. It recognized Raelle and it recreated her face. It reached out to her.
Has it been established that the mycelium is bad? Okay.
No, sorry, that was very impulsive. But no, I actually don't think the mycelium is bad.
Funguses are parasites. They're not inherently good or evil. They just have they have a specific function. They have a thing that they do.
So there's some funguses that don't actually look like traditional funguses, like the
fungi.
Sometimes they look like this, sometimes, a lot of times. But here's the thing. Other ones, they're kind of like plasmids.
Chloe, you need to describe how they look normally. This is a podcast.
Oh boy. Oh dear. I'm sorry. So they look like a traditional mushroom, you know, you get at the store with the big cap and the gills and the little stemmy bit. And then some look like plasmids, and I'm drawing it, and it looks like a little squishy bit of jam. And so those things actually can grow and move on their own, and sometimes they glow in the dark, and they kind of pulsate almost. And again, they're not sentient, they're not alive, they have no heartbeat, but they like move.
They decrease in size and expand and move in that way. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. Yeah, they spread out and then they contract and something. It's almost as if like a muscle, and it's really cool.
Can I just say, Chloe mimicking and showing mushrooms on the podcast is my new favorite trope. But is it established in the show that Alder and the mycelium are connected?
It doesn't talk about mycelium at all, really.
No? Okay.
It's like we only find out about it in like the middle of the season. Mm-hmm. And it only becomes connected to Raelle when she touches the goo, which you should never do. Why do people always do that? Anyway,
Yeah, it feels like an old thing, like like it feels like an ancient thing that's been there a long ass time, and maybe it was dormant, and all this stuff that Alder's been doing over the past few centuries has woken it up.
I wanted to talk about where it is, the mycelium. Why are we talking about the mycelium actually? But anyway, we're talking about the mycelium now. So, where it is located, because I mean, we don't know if it's just that wall or if it's spread out because it's in a building. And
It's yeah,
right?
it's in the Necro building, which is
Yeah.
underground. Like the entrance is that one car garage looking thing, and then it's all of it's underground. It seems like a pretty big facility, to be honest.
Yeah. But like is it contained within the facility?
I don't think so. I think it's spread out.
It looks like the entrance to the Upside Down from Stranger Things. And that's what I thought it was. Is really, when I first saw it, I was like, oh shoot, the Upside Down. And so it looks like that's like a part that they have like a physical hold on, but it seems like it is probably very, very large and spreads throughout.
Yeah. It's like if you have mold on bread, you shouldn't eat the bread because it will there's bits spread out throughout it.
I thought the mycelium was spread out all over Fort
Right.
Salem.
My first impression was that it was basically that it was part of the necro division and that they were using it for something.
Yeah.
I think Elliot said it was a doorway. Or did I imagine?
It looked like a doorway. I agree. It very much looked like a doorway.
Does Scylla do something with mushrooms at some point?
She grew a death cap out of a bird using a seed sound, and it was hot.
Bird shrooms. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, this is like a common in real life. Like, I don't want to say this wrong because I have friends who are very in the Wiccan religion and culture, and she'll yell at me if I get it wrong. It's kind of like a magical thing, like ley lines. They connect magical points, and if you are doing magic and you are kind of attached to those, and I don't know the whole concept of it, but it's because Laura mentioned the mycelium being like a mold and bread, and you shouldn't eat the bread because it gets into the whole thing. Even if you cut off all the parts that you can see, it's already there. Since the mycelium is magic, it could get into the ley lines in and around Fort Salem and affect the whole of the ground. So even though they have this part seemingly somewhat isolated that they have access to, it already probably has seeped in all throughout the area. Because when they healed Khalida, it was in the woods somewhere above ground in Fort Salem, and the mycelium on Rael's finger seems to have reacted with the black vine stuff that was on the girl, and so when she healed her, she didn't take the illness on herself. It got absorbed into the mycelium on her finger. It then abandoned ship on her finger and went into the ground. If you watch it, you can see it all the black stuff sink into the ground instead. So even though they're not near that wall right now, it still found its way back in. So that shit is probably everywhere.
Could that be the ley line though? Like, could the mycelium itself be the ley line? Because
it's more like a fungus, and the ley lines are like a non.
But I mean, charging
but
the power, but having
it would be
the
like a
power and
network
stuff like that.
because that's how
Yeah.
works,
It's
right?
it's like magic Wi-Fi. The ley lines. It's like magic Wi-Fi.
What I wanted to ask was more about the military aspect of things. Am I getting this right? Alder was the first witch to speak up, and then she basically founded a military within what was to be the United States. And then other countries saw that the US did this and also had a Wiccan army then. Because at The Hague, I was very confused. I was like, are you all witches, or are you all just heads of your military but maybe not but then the seed sounds came up and I was like, oh, so they must be witches?
And they were speaking mother tongue.
These things can happen these revolutions can happen over different countries, especially if the US, or what would become the US, was a leading country at the time in ideas. So maybe this would have created incentive for other witches around the world or other governments around the world to solve the witch problem, to install something like the American model.
We don't know how long it took, because sometimes, I don't know about you guys, I had to constantly remind myself that we live in the age of social media where everyone finds out about everything instantly. So back then, it would have been, I mean, yeah, witches have scrying stuff. They can probably talk to each other. But for, like, the non-witch governments, by the time they found out what happened in the soon-to-be United States, I mean, a significant amount of time would have passed, you would think. I mean, and also they said the revolution lasted, like, a couple days once the witches got involved. Like, they smashed we assume it was still the British. So, I mean, it was a very quick revolution, and by the time the other countries found out about it, they could have very well had a good witch military being put in place by then. So they're like, oh shit, we need to catch up.
There's this, I mean, disregarding the fact that they are actual witches, if you look at the real witch trials of innocent people who didn't actually do anything, but just, like, mostly not believe in the church. A lot of
Or were just there. They were just there. They're like, you're a witch. Like, okay.
Unfortunate circumstances, or they were opinionated women, or they practiced their own kind of medicine, or they refused the authority of the church mostly.
Or didn't have a husband.
Or didn't have a... No, I mean, or like, what I'm trying to say is that they being... what word were you using?
Gagging?
Yeah, basically, I find has a very nice correlation to basically silencing women in a patriarchal society.
Ooh, yeah.
I mean, but isn't that what the show is about? Like, women finding... we didn't say it on the podcast yet because it's probably so obvious. But yeah, the notion of women using their voices and actually having to be heard for once in history is a very...
now it's amplified, obviously, because they can actually kill you with their voices. So it would make sense to be wary of that. So, I mean, aside from being silenced, I would also assume that maybe they were then underestimated, and that's why they removed the gag from Alder, and they're like, oh, she's just a silly woman. She has her ovaries in her left boob, and she has an inverted penis in... They used to think the wildest stuff, by the way, about women's anatomies, and it's actually really funny, but also historically very dangerous. But, like, that's a different subject. But so I would assume that until that point they would have underestimated women.
Coming back to Alder, didn't really answer my question about, like, the different... Yes, actually, Alex and Laura, you did, with the maybe once other countries saw, like, that witches were very powerful, the whole world basically followed in America's footsteps, and we were like, okay, we're going to enslave these witches. But I think it's hinted a couple of times in the season that Alder is almost a godlike figure, I want to say. But, like, maybe for some godlike, for some maybe Satan, like Rael. Like, no witch in history has more blood on her hands. But then again, she's so mystical. Like, there's pageant plays about her. That's not normal. I mean, she's still alive.
Mystical god figure, especially two witches who would see her as, like, a liberator almost, because I don't think other countries enslaved witches after that whole thing happened. I think maybe witches realized, hey, yeah, we can do this too. We'll make this deal with you. So, I mean, it's like slavery light, you know? It's not like chains and shackles. You just have to serve the military. It's like, it could be worse, could be better. But yeah, she probably is like a mystical figure to them. But the people who aren't witches would just be like, this is very strange. She's killed lots of people. She's not dead yet. She looks great though.
Or maybe instead of Rael being Jesus-like, I mean, the Alder is the one who has always a group of women following her everywhere who will do anything, because Rael is apparently lesbian Jesus. That's a theory. That's a crack theory.
I mean, there's certain imagery, I guess. You know, she's the healer.
There are 7 biddies, by the way.
Oh, there are 7. Okay, yeah.
And how many people does Jesus have?
There's 12 apostles.
Yeah, there's 12 apostles.
Jesus and the heaps.
7 is a magic
Money.
number.
Yes, 7 is a magic number.
And I don't remember why, but
because that's how many Horcruxes Voldemort had. Duh.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also the 7 deadly sins.
7 biddies is probably, I'm sure they did that on purpose, but
Oh
also I still
yeah.
think is correct that she needs more biddies as time goes on. So
Yes.
Can we talk about the biddies, the touching at one point?
Do it.
the touching?
No. The
I can't do
touching,
it.
like the sound that they make, they go like,
Oh, I was like, who did they touch?
I know, it's like, who's touching who?
Sorry, those words look the same, okay?
no. So I will restart that sentence, I think. I would like to talk about the certain sounds that the biddies make when they are disapproving of people. For example, of Bellwether, I think, and other people who question Alder, and they go like
the click noises, some
clicking.
kind of, yeah.
First of all, is that something that only they can do? Or is it something that only they are allowed to do? And also, if it's clicking, is it reminiscent of the mother language that they were speaking in The Hague? End of question.
Ooh.
I have an idea. No. I don't think it has anything to do with mother tongue. I think it has more to do with emotional expression. Because I think the biddies are directly linked to Alder, right? So they have her age, but they also share, I think, we talked about a hive mind last episode in regards to like the spree, but I think Alder and the biddies are much more of a hive mind. Like what Alder thinks, the biddies think, maybe vice versa. And I think they feel her extreme emotions. So I think they only do that when she's like super mad or shocked or enraged, or because she never does this, but it's always in moments where you see her go like, bitch, really? I do think it's like directly like her emotions, and they just vocalize this because they sometimes do the hissing noise too, right? They have like two distinct, they have a hiss and then they have like a kind of clicking, tisking something, and then they have the looks, the like where they look in unison in one direction or tilt their head all at once. Like, for example, at Anacostia, when she... Do you know that scene when, I think in episode, I think it's 1X07, and Anacostia goes to tell Alder that Scylla feels regret, and then all of the biddies, as well as Alder, they lift their head, be like, no, we ain't showing regret for no spree. Do you know that scene? Is that just in my head very clearly?
Oh, I remember. Vividly? It makes you question even more the morality of Alder having biddies, which I did want to go into depth about a little bit more at some point. Doesn't have to be right now. The morality of it, because they seem to lose a certain amount of their humanity, like not just their individuality, but their humanity a little bit, because they like not just their youth, but so they become so attached to Alder that they are an extension of her. Like when Kalita was ill in the medical wing and she let loose a seed sound, and they all immediately dove on top of Alder. Like they were not protecting their own heads, they were on top of her. They're emotional support biddies. They're so much of an extension of her now. Like her personality, her life force, her mental, being has like pushed some of them out of themselves when they do their ascension ritual thing, and is like she's like an octopus brain, and they're the tentacles.
Just like one anti-question to this, don't you think they lose themselves not because they lose themselves, but because they give themselves willingly? They realize, oh, we have to protect Alder because this is my life now, and not because they don't want to preserve themselves. I think they still have that.
I mean, I don't know, it could also be magic, but for me, my first impression was that it was just that they are immensely loyal. Mm-hmm. And they gave their most of their life, they gave their youth to Alder so that she could live. And so they must believe in the fact that what they have done is worth it, and so that means that also Alder is worth it.
They, at some kind of subconscious level, recognize her as themselves. So, like, protecting her is protecting themselves. because they're like, I noticed an octopus already. Now I'm moving to starfish. Starfish can lose a limb and grow a new one. Alder can lose a biddy and get another one, but they can't lose her.
I mean, but if you think about like cults and the way that they have these godlike leaders, people have died for these leaders. People have died with them. If you think about, for example, Jonestown, and I know that some of those people were forced to drink the poison or were shot, but they had those who blindly took the poison, who blindly shot other people in the name of ascending, I think, and for this guy who they thought was actually leading them to salvation. And I feel like that is, in these extreme cases, that is something that seems out of the question, but they clearly didn't have a very individual self-preservation. And so I feel like you do see even if they are rare, you do see examples of like blind fanaticism and people just really, really believing in this one idealized person, that they would give their life for them, and I feel like the Alder could definitely qualify as one of those people. I don't think it has to be. It can be magic, but I don't know if it has to be. But obviously, through that linking, there will be some effect, obviously, on their psyche and their bond, obviously, as well.
And that's like the morally great part, because yeah, it is voluntary. We talked to Devin, the girl who took the place of the biddy who died in episode 3, and she was very honored and very excited, and she'd been training for it or preparing for it to some extent, and you know, so it's a voluntary. It's considered a huge honor, and Tally says that herself, and she voluntarily gave herself to Alder. A little bit of a shit situation, but yeah, no one's forcing them to do anything. But the gray part is like, you know, the only reason it has to be done, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes, is because she refuses to die.
Going off what Alex said, is that in the show, death is, again, like previously mentioned, death is okay in the show. They have no issues sending like young women off to go die in the battlefield. And Abigail herself says people die all the time in war. And so that the death isn't like a new thing for this, which is it's going off Alex says again, she just refuses to die when it's something that's so prevalent in their society and culture. But then a secondary thing for the biddies, a specific bloodline, I think, was set to have like be more powerful, I guess, too, which was really interesting. I didn't know what you guys thought about that, but like, oh, we need to have this next girl in line because she's part of this bloodline and stuff like that. And I thought it translated from the original people that Alder was with, but that would include Petra Bellwether. But the Bellwether.
I didn't catch that.
Okay,
like
yeah,
with the line. No, but explain it though.
Briefly, what I had gathered is that they chose a specific set of candidates that would give her more power because they're the part of the original group of witches that Alder like formed and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm like going nutso or if I remember this because they're like, oh, we need to get the next girl who's preparing, like her. Like shouldn't be anyone else. It needs to be her. And so she's ready and stuff like that.
Interesting. I didn't catch that. That might very well be, and I might have very well missed that. But I just thought, it's a huge honor, but not very many people want to do it, and not very many people actually sign up for it. So you have maybe per year 4 people, and then you just choose the best one. But maybe we're totally off track. I don't know. I'm very hyped for season 2, where we actually get to be. I hope we get to see Tally's POV.
I think it is. It's definitely going to be a plot point because you have Raelle and Abigail in wherever the fuck. So like while they're finding their way back home, Tally's being a biddy, and that's a plot point to show us what Alder is doing and thinking to give the audience like feelings because Tally is now connected. But then she gets unbiddified and everything is fine again.
Prediction for season 2. You heard it here first. In this case, we can wrap it up.
Didn't we recommend something last time?
Okay, cool. Let's end on Rex again. So last week I recommended Scam France. So this week I'm going to recommend Scam España.
I love that show.
So this week I'm going to recommend Scam España because Scam France is very gritty, very dark, very much everyone's mentally ill and dying. Scam España is very sunny. It's very party-like. There's lots of queer rep. There's also lots of ethnic representation, various characters. It's really cool. It's only in Spanish, but it has subtitles. It's on YouTube. If you type in Scam España temporada 1, 2, 3, I think 4 is out too.
My recommendation is going to be She-Ra. It is on Netflix. It is by showrunner, executive producer Noelle Stevenson. Noelle Stevenson said trans rights, and she said gay rights many times. It is a great show. It is like a kid's show, but it's still, I'm 27. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's 5 seasons, but the episode's only like 25 minutes, and seasons 2 and 3 are half seasons, so it doesn't take long to binge the whole thing. Lots of great queer representation. There's lesbians, everyone's like queer coded. There are trans characters. There's a non-binary character, and it is like the best childhood friends to enemies to lovers trope ever. It was great. It's on Netflix. It just finished in May. It's wonderful. Then you can go and look at all the fan art because it's very pretty.
Okay, my recommendations, my 2 recommendations are, for a hobby that's really cute and fun, watercolor painting. It's really like you can do a lot of stuff with minimal watercolors. It's really fun. It's enjoyable. And then my other recommendation is a book recommendation. The Secrets of the Immortal Nicholas Flamel, like that kind of series. It's really good. It's a little bit youthful, but it's a fun read. It's a great world building, great magic aspect of it. The way they use magic is really cool. And yeah, it's fun.
I'm currently reading a book by Patti Smith, and I had not heard of her before this, and now I'm a complete fan. It's an autobiography about her and Robert something, and he's an artist. He was an artist. Anyway, I just wanted to say it's called Just Kids, and it's written so beautifully. And she's a little bit old-fashioned with her views on gender, but also she's really cool, and so I forgive her because she writes from the time that she grew up in and stuff.
Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode of TV and Tequila. If you liked this episode, it would be absolutely grand if you gave us a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel for more TV talks. Also, if you have a specific topic you would like us to discuss in our Motherland Fort Salem series, please let us know in the comments. That is all. Cheers!